In your working folder is an image named 687_3413.237.jpg. Another image from our guys out there, our happy people at Photospin. At least I assume they're happy. Go ahead and open that one up if you want to follow along, or open up one of your own. Let me move this over again. Let's look at exposure. Actually, if we come down here and click, you'll notice that these are kind of like in groups. And we looked at one of these up here earlier, solid color. Let's look at exposure. Now we're going to hit levels and curves pretty hard in other chapters. And I've never been a really big fan of brightness and contrast, although it has improved some. Let's go to exposure. Now in exposure, you have some presets, like a -1 will make it darker, and a +1 will make it lighter. Let's go ahead and take that back to default. You have 3 options: exposure, offset, and gamma correction. And you do have some eyedroppers down here if you want to use them. In other words, attempt to correct the image by clicking. Like you think you know where the middle tones are, you can click the middle eyedropper and say click somewhere around here. Interesting. Let's go ahead and go back into default. One other thing I would recommend, and we can still do this because we're running non-destructive, is that I would strongly recommend that when you're working on changing an image, color correction, stuff like that, I won't always do it in this lesson series because it does make a bigger file. But if you do go up to the word image on the pull-down menu and go to mode and change to 16-bit channels. Now, what does that do besides literally double the size of the file? Well, think of it this way. When you're changing an image, whether it's color or you're going into levels for exposure, whatever, you're stretching the material that you have. When you change the image to 16 bits, you have more rubber band to stretch. When you get done, you can take it back to 8 bits. Just a suggestion. Now let's come over here and look at exposure. Now exposure is like changing the shutter speed of the camera. So if I come over here and move that, I can lighten or darken the image up. I want it a little bit, but not a lot, just a little bit darker. If you go too far with any of these, you're going to ruin the image. These are small moves. That's what you want here, small moves. Let's stop right about there for now. Now, what's offset? Well, offset is like exposure, but it seems to concentrate to me on more the midtones, which is kind of where most things are, and it leaves the darker and lighter areas alone. So if we want to offset a little bit, you see, going either direction begins to wash it out, flattens it out. You can't do a lot here, just small moves. Anytime that we've done this, if we want to see what it looks like before and after, you can click this button right here, before and after. Now, gamma correction to me, again, works a little bit like exposure, but it seems to work a lot like the raw plugin does it, which I like. So in gamma, go too far in either direction, you're going to ruin it. Small moves at any one time, making slight adjustments in exposure, offset, and gamma correction. Now, if you don't like it, you can click this button here and it throws the adjustment layer away. This one we know is before and after. This one is reset it. Man, I just want to start all over again. This one, if we had a previous setting, would show us the previous setting. This one we'll talk about in the next lesson, and that's about linking or chaining adjustment layers to particular layers themselves. Let's say we like that, we're happy with it, but maybe we would like to change just one of these, and we know if we click here, it resets everything. Here's a trick for you. If you double-click on one of these, it resets just that one. And you can then play around with it again and get it exactly where you want it to be. And if you're happy with what you've done, we can then go ahead and go to the next step. Now, what's that? Well, we could print this now. I mean, it would work. We could leave that adjustment layer exactly where it is. No big deal. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're done. You know you're done. It's better. You know it's better. And there's nothing you could do to the image that would make it any better. Why have an exposure adjustment layer if you don't need it? Now, to tell you the truth, I never touch my negatives. If I'm going to do what I'm about to show you I'm going to do, I would have the original image in another file somewhere. I would never do this to the original, but if we're ready to go with this one, we could go up here to this little button in layers right there and go down to, doesn't matter which one of these we choose, but if we flatten the image, Basically, what we have done is we have locked ourselves in. But like I said, if you're going to do this, have the original somewhere. Never mess with your negatives. I grew up in a darkroom. My father built me a darkroom when I was about 10 years old. Traditional film darkroom. I never messed with my negatives. I printed them. Don't mess with your negatives. If you're going to collapse it out like this, make sure you got the original. Someday you're going to want to go back to it.